Hello, I'm Claire Van der Zant, Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Shieldpay, and I'm delighted to be joined here today with Pete Janes, Group CEO and founder of Shieldpay, and Eugene Bourke, Executive Vice President of Mastercard Global Partnerships and Segments. Massive thank you both to you for your time today. Do you want to give us everybody a quick intro for the people listening? If I come to you first, Pete.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. Name's Peter Janes, the original founder and global CEO at Shieldpay. So we incorporated 2016, 1 year and a half with the FCA getting regulated. First trading year was 2018. We've seen it from obviously a team of one to now a team of just shy of 100. All the ups and downs that go along the way. So there's not much I don't know about Shieldpay, so hopefully I can get it across in this lovely session with Eugene.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. And Eugene, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Look, thanks for inviting me today. Very excited to be part of this. I guess I'm a bit of a Mastercard veteran now. I've been around for a quarter of my life at Mastercard, so and it's been a good quarter. But primarily, my role is to find and develop new partnerships in non-traditional segments of Mastercard. So how can we evolve our business in non-traditional parts of payments or the services? And that's what my team do. We do have some traditional partners as well, but not as relevant to this conversation.
Well, hopefully we'll bring some of that out in the conversation today for sure. So we're here to talk today about all things innovation in business transactions and payments. But before we get into the meat of the conversation, let's talk a little bit more about Shieldpay and Mastercard. I mean, I highly doubt that people don't know who Mastercard are, but maybe not in the context of more of the B2B and commercial side, and some of the journey that Shieldpay and Mastercard have already been on together, and why we're in the room talking together. So back in 2018, Shieldpay took part in the Mastercard Start Path Accelerator program, and has continued to work closely with Mastercard throughout their growth journey. Can you both talk to me a little bit about the early journey the two businesses have been on together? And Pete, if I can come to you first, tell us a little bit about what it was like getting selected for Start Path, and the Shieldpay journey through the program.
Yeah, well, actually, the first touch point we had with Mastercard is a member of the team watched our Barclays Techstars Accelerator demo day pitch and thought that we might make a good candidate for the upcoming accelerator program with Mastercard. So we basically went from one accelerator straight into another one. It felt like a bit more, no offense to the Techstars program, the Mastercard one was going to be a bit of a step up. It was a lot more, I guess, structured in a way to expand out that partnership potentially with Mastercard, whereas the early incubator problem was just figuring out what the hell to do. We were fortunate that we were selected as part of that. I mean, I know that it's a very competitive process. I mean, you've got some fantastic companies that have come through. I think the year before us, 2017 Revolut, were accepted. So it was, we were chuffed to bits to be selected as part of it. We pitched in Ireland in front of the innovation team at that point, and must have done okay because we got a nod that we were joining that program. And I think having heard one of the reasons why we were selected, I think we were tackling a part of the ecosystem that Mastercard were looking at but didn't have a much of a foothold in. It's obviously, being on this call, one of the non-traditional segments that Mastercard are very much looking to broaden scope into, and we were actively going after it. So I think that we ticked a lot of boxes for Mastercard, and so far it's been a great relationship from that point onwards.
Great, thank you. And Eugene, talk to me about some of those boxes that we ticked. What was it you saw in Shieldpay in the early days, and why did it make a great candidate for the Start Path program?
I think as Peter said, it's a tough program to get on. I mean, I think we have around about 1,500 applications a year. It's a 2% acceptance rate. And I think actually since 2014, it's only about 250 companies have been through the program. So it really is quite a select group, and this is a global program, right? And we're selecting partners in every region and division that we look at. And what's really important in my previous role to this one, I still have an executive responsibility for HSBC Group. And one of the great things about the Start Path program, it enables us to take partners and bring them to our traditional clients as well. You know, both the bank and the acquiring merchant side of our relationships, and that's a wonderful opportunity to want to help to innovate with these partners, and we've done that in many occasions. You know, but I think, you know, answering your direct question on what we probably always saw in Shieldpay at that time, I think it's as Pete said, it's directing you're directing your disbursement potential services in markets that we don't target, you know, and it's really important that we look at the different flows that exist in the ecosystem that maybe we don't touch today, but there are ways we want to touch them tomorrow as we continue to expand the payment services we offer and how we get to those. And that you know, in my part of the world, that's all about partnerships. You know, we don't have to evolve everything ourselves. You know, we can look for the right partners. So I think what's been great about the program as well, and this hopefully is tantamount to that, is that by staying close, we get to evolve together. You know, and I think that's really important, and hopefully we can continue to do that with Mastercard and Shieldpay.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I hope so too. For those who aren't aware, and Pete, before we dive into some more of the questions, do you want to give us a little bit of an overview of Shieldpay? We've talked a little bit to it in terms of a few elements, but give us the Shieldpay elevator pitch.
Yeah, well, for those shieldpay.com, if you could go there, divert some traffic. But basically what we do is we're digitizing almost the last bastion of analog-based payments that still exist within the ecosystem, and these are very complex, high-value transactions that traditionally a law firm would have had to process. And the nature of what we do is essentially providing services that allow a much more streamlined, cost-effective, and digitized payment experience for transactions such as M&A, paying agent roles, supply chain transactions, B2B marketplaces, any type of transaction that requires a third party to safeguard funds, or traditional, as you'd call it, traditional escrow, we digitize. And it's been a long journey, because escrow, although it's been around for over 100 years, it hasn't really been digitized well or presented in a format that can be adopted at high frequency or by partners such as Mastercard. So we've been on a 5-year journey of essentially democratizing escrow, and it's been a painful up and down journey, but so coming out the other end of it with a really solid reputation now for being able to provide, you know, high end, really complex payments, and it's going well. The partnership with Mastercard is only going to amplify what's already working, and we're enjoying working alongside Mastercard since 2018.
Fantastic. There's a little phrase that I remember picking up when I first joined the business a few years ago, which is the payments that matter the most, and it's really stuck with me. You know, you're talking about transactions that really aren't all day every day. You know, it's not consumer, it's not even B2B. It's, you know, we're not invoicing or accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll. It's this bonkers type of transaction that might be a once in a lifetime thing, whether you're buying a house or selling your business or driving fundraising for your startup. It really is those payments that matter the most. That always stuck with me. Thank you. And Eugene, obviously explaining to people what Mastercard did would be a bit daft, because I highly doubt that there's anybody out there that doesn't know who Mastercard are, but maybe less so in the space that we're talking about, in this world of commercial corporate types of transactions. Tell us a little bit more about Mastercard's involvement in this space.
Sure, and do you know what? I'd hope people do know who we are, but I still think people think of us as a credit card company. I mean that and incorrectly, because we've never been one. You know, I think it's good to look at us and start with, you know, we're a technology company in global payments, and I think that's a great place to kind of kind of to start and you think about Mastercard. And then when we think about the type of payments that we're interested in, I guess, as I said earlier, we're looking to continue to expand in payments. So we obviously do credit cards, we do debit transactions, we do B2B. B2B can be using cards or other forms of payment. We do account to account. We have real-time payment. And we're obviously moving into blockchain with the recently announced multi-token network, which we announced in June. And so for us, what's really important when we look at overall B2B, and whether that be accounts payable or disbursements and the type of activities looking at yourselves, there's a huge opportunity to disrupt and innovate in that space. Some of it can be done through ourselves, but a lot of it we're done through partnerships, and we see that opportunity predominantly, I think through partnerships. And I think the other thing that Mastercard can do and bring to many of our relationships that is not as clear when you think as an organization. We're not just a payments business. We have an enormous services company, and that services company allows us to bring expert payment consultancy, strategy consultancy, analytic capabilities, loyalty, and really importantly, fraud, cyber, and other capabilities that we can bring to support our clients on a day-to-day basis, but also allows us to actually innovate and target different types of transactions. Don't always have to be payment as well, which is also quite interesting. But I think when you look at B2B in general, it's a huge volume of business and transactions that I think, to your point, whether it be accounts payable or the type of flows that you described, are ripe for change, and I think that's what we're here to try to find a way to do that.
And that's a perfect segue into my next question. So thank you very much. Let's really zoom into the friction then that Shieldpay and Mastercard are seeing in this space and in facilitating B2B business transactions. What are some of the biggest pain points and challenges that the industries that we're talking about are experiencing? Pete, if I can come to you first, what are the challenges that Shieldpay are seeing in corporate and business transactions, and what is Shieldpay doing to address these challenges?
Yeah, so when we first entered this sector, what we discovered is that the end facilitator or manager of the flow of money for these types of transactions was almost exclusively a law firm or a professional services business of some description, who were the only entity that was regulated in a way that was allowed to safeguard funds. So even if they wanted to outsource it back then, who would they have outsourced it to? If you think of the traditional payment providers or digital payment providers who were hitting the network even 15 years ago, Adyen, Stripe, PayPal, none of them are regulated to safeguard funds in the way that a law firm needs them to. So for decades, law firms have had to run their own internal payments business on behalf of their clients. And it's incredibly fragmented work stream that they have, and also a very different work stream from one law firm to another. So there's nothing universal at all across the different law firms. And so that all leads to essentially a much poorer user experience for the end client. So for anyone who's listening in who's been involved in a high value transaction, whether it a home purchase or an M&A transaction, to your point earlier, was that the higher the value of the transaction, the more important it is, the actual worse the user experience gets. So what we looked at doing was enabling a law firm to replace their own internal processes with and outsource those transactions to a third party, i.e. us, because the law firm, because of the basically the rise in cybercrime, their insurance premiums have grown. The risk tolerance around holding funds, especially because of COVID, has changed completely. So although we felt like we were slightly early to market, law firms, especially over the last 24 months, are all now trying to find an alternative to them holding these funds themselves. And luckily for us, right place, right time, we've got a digital solution that they can now incorporate into their additional work streams. But it means that they can just now decommission their own client monies accounts and outsource all that administration, regulatory and insurance burdens to us, and then focus on the law, which is obviously what they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, it's I guess when we first entered the market, it was, wow, there's so much that's wrong with this. Where on earth do you start? And I think it was just a focus on the product that allowed a law firm to have trust in a third party to do this stuff so that they could focus on the day-to-day. So yeah, the pain points were everywhere, to be honest.
And we talk about obviously, you know, big ticket transactions that could be tens of millions, even billions in certain cases. But sometimes there's also the part of how you get money to individuals as part of that transaction. And one thing we hear a lot of is how prevalent checks still are in this space. You know, what are the things that Shieldpay are doing to, you know, displace what is a pretty archaic financial instrument these days in terms of checks?
Yeah, it's I guess as a startup with limited resources, you can only do so much. And so in the early days, we built onto the traditional payment rails, so fast payments, SEPA, in order to get those funds where they're supposed to be going. We can't do everything, and a lot of the functionality that we want to do has been built already. There are larger players doing it. So the three elements of what we do, the verification of payers, payees, the holding of money and the movement of money, we don't need to build all that ourselves. For the case you mentioned about the disbursements, we saw a fantastic partner in Mastercard who do this better than anyone. So why do we need to build something that will be a worse version of what already exists? Let's work with them. Let's incorporate their best-in-class services so that the overall end-to-end solution and that combined solution is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's basically what's been happening with Mastercard, especially over the last 6 months. Adding in flexibility on the disbursements, provide a much better user experience for the end customer, which is why we're in business in the first place. So yeah, it's a move, a fast-growing roadmap, but the working alongside Mastercard means it's a lot more streamlined than it's ever been.
Brilliant, thank you. And Eugene, you know, we talk about a lot about the legal sector because that's a core part of Shieldpay's experience, but Mastercard have some great experience in other industries in the B2B space. What are some of the challenges that Mastercard is facing into and addressing in this industry?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. So I think the capabilities that you guys have developed at Shieldpay are definitely the ability to deploy them in other use cases and other industries is really clear to us. And you know, if I just take insurance and claims disbursement, which effectively in many cases is a B2B accounts payable transaction, it's really a problem of disparate systems, multiple systems of record, maybe within one disperser, if you like, and a lack of workflow and collaboration tools around that. So how do you create those moments to enable the simplicity of the payment itself? But also what that enables you to do is bring, maybe in some cases, efficiency to the buyer, working capital, and a bunch of other benefits that come with enabling those types of solutions. And there's some, you know, in that insurance use case, that's some great opportunity for the carrier to close down cases more efficiently, and administration benefits as well. I think as well, something that I'm seeing more and more is that, you know, buyers and suppliers are looking at their relationship as more of a collaboration. You know, so if you're in that, again, in that claims disbursement use case, there is a collaboration happening, and there's a better understanding of the needs of both parties. But having the right system to do that, it becomes really important to that kind of process. And again, you can deploy these in many ultimate use cases. Freight is another great example, I think, where there are, you know, needs for escrow as a service at speed, right? And then really it's a case of understanding the exact use case and how do you bring the parties together. So yeah, but the main issue we see is I would say disparate systems, and then how do you embed your technology to bring differentiated value to that? Is the key piece.
Yeah, it's something we hear quite a lot of actually, which is how do you create transparency in the transaction so that you've got this clarity of where is it, where are we, what progress are we making, you know, within the transaction, because it's not just a I want to buy something, I pay for something. You know, there's so much more complexity involved in the transaction, multiple parties, multiple jurisdictions, multiple conditions that need to be true before it can complete. And having that solution that can provide transparency in the tools that people are actually already using, like, you know, collaboration tools, as you mentioned, or platforms that are specifically designed for industries, it is the next piece of how you unlock the opportunity here, for sure. So yeah, really agree with that bit. Brilliant.
Just one final point of that. And if you look in the big technology sector at the moment, and even those building, technology in the back of open APIs and some of the big ERP players, you see a lot of automation players. There's a couple of huge workflow management platforms that are growing significantly right now because they're targeting that system of action. How do I create action? We have companies have lots of systems that hold records of information. But what's more important is how do you take that out and create action from this? I think there's a lot of applicable opportunities on that basis.
Yeah, there really are, and I love a challenge, so that's why I like this complexity that's involved in bringing transactions to this space, because automation, when you're talking about payments, is just fraught with challenge, because every payment comes with its own risk. There are different goods, different services, different jurisdictions, different people that all require different journeys. So that automation piece in this space has been really challenging to face into and lean into. I think what's interesting, certainly from the Shieldpay perspective, is because we have built a business around, as Pete said, digitized, democratized escrow. The foundations of what we've built is how you effectively take risk-based decisions on those different transactions, and how you automate that to do it at scale. So it kind of feels like we came to the party with all the ingredients that people were screaming out for, which is great. But yeah, automation, I think if you just throw automation, AI and all those buzzwords in, everybody gets very excited, right?
Well, I think you provide an opportunity to collaborate, for organizations to collaborate. I think that's just, it's very interesting. Good.
Yeah. I've mentioned it previously, and I think it's worth just picking up on. It's often the case that the consumer world is first and fastest to adopt new technologies. Why do you think that businesses have been slower to embrace new digital payment methods, and what barriers need to be overcome? Pete, is a key piece here that corporate transactions are inherently more complex?
There's a bit of that, but also human behavior. They've been working a certain way for decades, and you're trying to educate about a brave new world where none of those things matter anymore. And obviously that process is not going to be flick of a switch and everyone moves over to the promised land. Unfortunately, there's people's jobs that may or may not have to change or aren't required anymore. It's a human behavior and an education around what's new, as well as essentially lots of noise in the space about other forms of automation, not just the payments piece. So I think we've seen, especially within the legal sector, and firsthand, it's a notoriously risk-averse sector anyway. And you're sort of suggesting to them that they're completely decommission an existing way of working and adopt something new. That is not an overnight thing. It's taken us 4 years, or 4+ years really, since getting our regulation to get people to trust us. And in the general payments, getting a startup to trust a startup with £5 is hard. Average transaction size is about $140,000. It's a huge chasm to cross. So it was a behavioural thing, as well as a reputational challenge, really, within this particular part of the sector.
Yeah, I also think there's part of that complexity, though, that is just so clear, having been with you on this journey and working through that. So if you're a consumer, you go into a shop or onto a website, and this is the thing I want to buy, and I click buy, and the thing that I wanted to buy gets delivered. That's just never the same in business transactions. There are multiple stakeholders, multiple business processes. the transaction touches so many different parts of the organization. There's so much at risk, not at risk, I guess, at stake with some of these really high value transactions as well. It just is
Sure.
perhaps somewhere that...
Yeah, the elephant in the room is they also charge for those elements of complexity as well. And it's saying, like, it's providing them a streamlined world where all of this is happening automatically. That means that you can, obviously, that those end benefits will come to the end customer because you're charging them less. That's also a real mindset shift as well for this particular sector, that, you know, where they were earning fees on doing certain things that aren't required anymore. How do you justify that in the P&L? So yeah, there's a lot that has to happen for this, especially this part of the sector, to fully embrace digital. But it is happening.
And Pete, just to pick up on the comment about, you know, getting people to trust a startup, which is part of the challenge that we all sign up for. But what were businesses, or what are businesses doing today if they're not using Shieldpay, and why are they still choosing old methods?
Yeah, good point. I mean, it's you're sort of seeing the first wave of clients that we took on were, I guess, more innovative, maybe, sorry to say it, but some maybe younger partners making those decisions at the top level in some of the law firms. I think with any new technology, they're going to be naysayers to it, or, you know, we do things a certain way, or they like having the control of the funds on behalf of their clients inside of their ecosystem. All of those things sort of make sense, but if you put it against the benefits of outsourcing it, streamlining of all those processes, much better user experience for the clients, it does tip towards obviously moving to digital. But yes, I think the reason people sort of, especially some of the later adopters, are still hanging on to the old ways of working, it's just because it's the way it's always been done. And some people will never embrace digital. You see that it happens in quite a lot of industries, and unfortunately those types of businesses don't stick around for very long. So yeah, it's happening with fairly standard adoption curve, early adopters, yeah, and then we're sort of seeing the tail end of it now, embracing it, because you can point to case studies where other people have done it and it's been successful, and the Trustpilot scores are great. So yeah, the tipping point, I think, happened for us in 2021. That was really when the industry went, okay, you've proved enough for us to start moving. And so yeah, we still came through in our numbers around about 2021.
I've heard this a few times in different scenarios, but I always get this wrong in terms of which gen it is, X, Y, Z, but not millennials. The older generation have got about 20 years left in the workforce overall. And the expectation is that sort of when millennials are stepping up and taking the board positions and partner positions, at that point, you've got an entire generation of digitally native people in business. And actually, does that force then transformation in waves that we haven't seen before? Maybe.
I think it's happening. I mean, we've got I get into the millennial bracket by 1 year, just hanging on there. But obviously, I think it's anyone who's over 40 now just gets in. And so, yeah, I think the partners at law firms normally take partnership roles in their late 30s. So you're starting to see the millennials taking those roles as you know, in real time now. So yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening, and they're challenging the old ways of working. Like, why are we doing this? It costs a fortune, bad user experience. Let's do this. Yeah, it's happening. It's happening now.
Eugene,
a proud Gen Xer here, definitely not in the millennial bucket, unfortunately, but probably feel relatively digitally native, I think, these days. So
well, that's good to hear from a technology company. So Eugene, talk to us then a little bit about the insights that Master has in terms of adoption of new payment solutions, perhaps some of the experiences that the Mastercard have had as well in business transactions, and your journey there.
This is really interesting. As Pete was speaking, I was just thinking back to 2013-14, and when I was trying to persuade one of our bank clients in the UK to issue contactless cards outside of the M25. So and then we're only 10 years on, and 10 years can be a long time, but it's also a short time, you know, and yet now you don't see anyone using anything but a phone to pay for everything, and so that's quite a journey in what has been a relatively short period of time, and obviously driven heavily by consumerism, you know, and I think the point of changing a consumer's behavior is far easier than changing a corporate's, because they may only make a decision to change behavior once every however long, 3 to 5 years, maybe, depending on how they're willing to change technology. So I think that's always one of the big barriers to change. Also, just thinking back to, if you just take that simple idea of you have a domestic payment product, a card, a debit or a credit card, when you're trying to get a corporate even just to use a T&E program to put it into a digital environment, it's not that corporate is not bought into the concept of making it easier for their employees to make payments, because they don't really want them to be easy to make payments. They want it to be convenient, but actually, you know, it's not something that would be seen as being investable. But we are now seeing that change now, and not just driven by I say consumerization, but actually some real customer needs. So when you think about just simple, how do I ensure that contractors can use T&E programs? Well, I digitize a card into a wallet so they can use it immediately and have those kind of experiences.
Sorry,
so
I don't understand.
Sorry about that. That's my
there goes your technology.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
That's some immediate feedback from technology. But that just wanted to give you a sense of, so we see that changing right now. We do see that, you know, maybe to the point that you raised, Claire, that, you know, as the workforce naturally changes, people have different demands, but they also understand the experiences that you can kind of deliver, you know, with that delivery of from a technology perspective. So we see that to continue to grow. I think as well, there's a lot more, when I think about commercial accounts payable, there's a lot more demand from the buyer side, so the supply side, in terms of how they want to be treated, how they want to work, how they want to get paid, what their requirements are, the flexibility that comes with that as well. And there's a lot of players interrupting and disintermediating in that space as well. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I keep coming back to the data and consultancy piece that the Mastercard offer, and I think that's almost part of the key of helping businesses unlock why getting your payment solutions digital is so powerful. Because imagine the data that comes out of you having all of that completely digitized, something that you can learn from, draw insights from, track against, measure against. It's really powerful in terms of what that can bring to businesses. It's just how we help them unlock that understanding. And
imagine if you're on the receivable side and you have some technology, and this exists, where I can see on my invoices where they're coming in, where am I getting paid, where are they due over the next 3 to 6 months, and I see a cash flow problem, and I can make an immediate request from a buyer that I'll get paid by card, and you get paid immediately. You may pay a discount for that, but then you can manage your workflow in that way, because the tools are all there and there are multiple ways that you can get paid. You can deploy that in any kind of environment. It's a commercial environment. So that's pretty fascinating, that kind of, you know, disruption. But again, you know, when we're looking into the kind of spaces where we're partnering, I think there's even more opportunity, because take insurance as an example. There's multiple different parties, you know, often involved in single transactions. So being able to bring simplicity to that, and also being able to identify and authenticate the end user or the insured party and disperse funds in efficient ways is really critical, and will really help the consumer experience in those industries. I do think one of the things that has really changed in the last few years as well, perhaps driven by consumerism, is that if end users of if I'm taking out insurance, if I'm taking any kind of policy, if I'm buying a house, whatever it is, I have a greater degree of desire to be serviced. And I think that is just enormous, you know, and we see that driving a lot of behavior from some corporates as they think about how they serve their customers.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in this industry because there are a few truisms that I think are just inherent in what we do. One is that money makes the world go round, and that's just a human truth. And the second one is, apart from the goods perhaps that you're actually buying, the most tangible part of any transaction is the money. You know, you can go through all of the complicated contracting, negotiations, but it doesn't feel real until there's a transaction, until there's money, or if, you know, in the insurance example, if you're receiving a claim, all the hoops you have to go through are just so that you can get the money. Like, that's the really tangible bit. And so when we haven't created amazing experiences around that bit specifically, you can do all you want to the rest of the journey, and it will always fall over at the last hurdle. And I'm a massive fan of amazing customer experiences, and you know, being involved in that really tangible, meaningful part of that transaction that has the ability to completely change the experience, good or bad, is where I think it's most interesting. One final question then before I wrap up today's session. We've talked a lot about challenges and pain points and all the gritty parts of it. Let's kind of lift up now and look more to the future and the opportunities, and what are some of the biggest opportunities for businesses who are looking to go digital on their transactions and payments today. Pete, from Shieldpay's experience, what do you see as the future for business or corporate transactions?
Well, we talked about automation quite a lot, and it's so cumbersome the way that some payments are held that it's an art form in itself, and it should just be happening. It should be a seamless process that people can visually see the steps are being taken, and it just happens. Like the hard work of getting, you know, a house that you like, organizing, you know, the mortgage, and the actual painful part of, you know, exchanging and making sure the funds arrive at a certain time so you know that house is physically yours. That makes no sense, and it definitely doesn't make any sense to the generation coming up behind us. So I think the biggest opportunities are, you know, creating types of automation around payments where they just happen. It's a seamless process that people trust, highly secure, obviously within the right parameters. And you know, what we do shouldn't be in people's face. It should be whirring away in the background seamlessly. People get notifications on the phone. Oh, it's done. Great. Back to the coffee. I think that's the world that we want to build. It shouldn't be this hoopla of paperwork and stress, which unfortunately that's still the world that we live in. For anyone who's bought a house, it's still the same. It's still awful. Trying to sort out an insurance claim, still awful. So yeah, not getting into the world of freight because I don't do that, but I know that's super painful. So yeah, I think there's a really nice mecca that Shieldpay and Mastercard can build together, where these payments just they're seamless, they just happen, and that's the world that we want to build.
And Eugene, over to you. There was something that was on my mind really that I thought would be interesting to ask you, but I'll give you the open-ended question. But it was also, you know, is there something around the optionality of providing payments to individuals and corporates in the way that they want to receive them, which I know is obviously a huge skill set and experience of Mastercard as well. But I'll leave you the open-ended question as well.
No, I agree with Pete, but yeah, I think giving people options and companies options to how they receive goods or receive payments, will be a mark of how things evolve, right? I think, you know, we stand as an organization that wants to give choice in payments. We want to try to be able to enable all the choices that you may or may not want to send and receive, buy, transact, whatever that would be. You know, how can we facilitate all of those things and enable ourselves to be a platform for our partners to innovate on, and we can hopefully provide, you know, rails and technologies that can help kind of support that. But yeah, I think it's the background immediacy. You know, real-time payments will continue. How that evolves cross-border will be very interesting to see, and the continued growth of blockchain technologies, particularly as you know, and I mentioned earlier the launch of our multi-token network, which we launched last month, I think it was 2 months back. You know, as we think about how, you know, we can move digital assets globally as well, and how that can be supported by central banks, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things are around creating simple, immediate, reconcilable ways of moving funds. And I think it's about being in the immediate transaction flow. That's the most important thing, you know, and being a trusted brand to be in there, right? you know, we want to maintain that trust factor that goes along with the brand above my right shoulder, which is critical for our business. It is very much who we are, and you know, and as Shieldpay evolve, you are becoming that in the sector that you work in. Like, you know, hence why collaborating together, you know, should be something that is something that we can do. That you know, we work off each other in that perspective. So that's quite an exciting evolution, I guess.
In fact, we could be the real life version of a word that's used a lot at the moment in the payment space, and if I can get my teeth in and say it properly, which is interoperability. You know, when you're talking about, yes, got it. But you know, if you're talking about CBDCs, or you're talking about blockchain and distributed ledger and real-time gross settlement and all the buzzwords that are going around in the payments industry today, it is about how we work better together. There is a recognition that we have perhaps overcomplicated payments, and you know, in some ways it's been because of systems and legacy and things we've had to work around. But that future of interoperability, I do genuinely think is a real North Star. It's going to be collaborations, as you say, like, you know, Shieldpay and Mastercard, that actually start to bring those to life and demonstrate how you do that in a tangible, step-by-step way into, you know, that's the future of CBDCs. I get very excited about it because I think it's an amazing North Star, but I think we need to find tangible ways to get there along the journey.
Completely agree.
So on that big bombshell of a very complicated word, I want to say a huge thank you, Pete, Eugene. Really appreciate your time today. For anybody who's interested, stay tuned on the journey that we go on in this brave new world of digitizing and taking business transactions into the whateverth century we're going to go into. Thank you. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Pete.